Well, Jill, it's a good chance for me to get to see you again. It's been so long. Jill and I actually went to college together, clear back in the day, and we had quite the group there back in college, I remember. But you've gone on. This is a podcast about extraordinary people, and you've done some awesome things. You had a private equity firm. You worked with a company, a startup that we'll get into quite a bit called Duo, and then now you're doing another venture, which is wedding financing. And I love your story. You're always moving. You're always just one thing after the next. So it's good to be here and catch up.
It's awesome. I think I rented some DVDs from your apartment in college that I never returned. So it's good to be back.
You were the one. So what happened was this was back, we're old, but this was back when DVDs were a thing. And I had probably 300-400 DVDs. Yeah. And first semester, people would just come over and they'd ask if they could borrow one. But at the end of the semester, I was missing like 40 DVDs.
It's probably me.
Well,
yeah.
I started keeping tabs after that. I'd make you just sign your name. I just didn't want to lose my DVDs. I wasn't renting them. I wasn't charging people. I just didn't want to lose them. It was funny. At the end of the semester, I went over to try to collect from all the people. And I would bet 2/3 of the people are like, yeah, I don't have it, man. That's not me. And I would, can I just go through your DVDs real quick and see? And every one of them had the DVDs. Like, wow, I am so sorry. I'm like, it's fine. And so... That's the memory we have from college. Yep. I love it. It was interesting that we had a great group of just people from different backgrounds that came together at that. And I've always looked back at that time. That was when I first moved to Provo and to college.
Yeah. Yeah, it was awesome.
I remember the first day I moved in, I had been moving my stuff into my condo. I bought the condo, and I'm 22 years old. I moved about half my stuff in, including a TV, a big screen TV, and then I went up to Salt Lake to get the rest of my stuff. When I came back, there was like 5 random dudes in my apartment playing video games on my TV. I'd never met them before. I'm like, oh, hey guys. Yeah. But that was just a cool group. So, well, tell us a little bit after college, dive into a little bit how you got to where you are today.
Well, gosh, I studied business in college and finance, particularly in entrepreneurship, and didn't really know where that would quite take me, but I knew I wanted to be surrounded by really smart, hardworking people, and I thought that was a route to do that. During college, I had a cleaning company, and so I graduated. I had this job lined up. I was going to go do management consulting in Seattle, and ended up, but I thought, gosh, what I'd really love to do is partner with, I had this adjunct professor who invested in businesses and would operate those businesses that he bought. And I thought, gosh, I'd really just love to partner up with him. And I thought that one day and woke up the next morning to a call from him saying, hey, this is totally random, but would you want to work together? So I proceeded to do that. We partnered together with a handful of other entrepreneurs and formed a private equity fund. And we raised about $50 million in the first fund and another 50 in the second fund. So I did that for about 10 years and had a total blast doing it, and was able to be around really smart people, hardworking, and had a ton of exposure to a ton of different businesses.
So what kind of a fund was it? What did you guys invest in?
We were focused on consumer products and services, and our focus was that we would take operating roles in those companies when it was needed. Oftentimes we were investing in businesses that we put it as they were at an inflection point, whether it was they'd been mom and pop and steady state, but there was this opportunity to jump into, or it was change in management team, or just different phase of the business. So we would typically go in and work with the existing team or owners and say, okay, this next stage of growth is going to look like this, and let's figure out what human capital is needed, what financial capital is needed, and go in and really grow those businesses.
Wow, that's such a fun opportunity to
do
that.
Yeah.
Do you have one example you could share of one of your favorite companies that you guys worked with?
Well, so we acquired Winder Dairy back in the day and turned it into Winder Farms. That was a fun one, and I learned more about the dairy industry than I ever knew there was to learn. One of the most enjoyable ones for me was some buddies of mine in school actually had formed Wasatch Relay, if you remember that. And we thought, gosh, speaking of inflection points in businesses where there's opportunity to grow, what if we partner up with them and create a series out of the concept of long distance team relay races? So that's where we formed Ragnar Relay, which I'm sure you're familiar with.
Of course.
So we did
you guys
Ragnar,
formed Ragnar.
In partnership with the founders there of Wasatch Back Relay. And so now there's Ragnar across the country, and Tanner's over there in Europe getting that going, and one of the founders getting that going in Europe. So that was fun. And then one of my next favorite was the Brine Shrimp Cooperative that we formed. And here in the Great Salt Lake, there's a bunch of brine shrimp, sea monkeys, as formerly known. And so we helped form the Brine Shrimp Co-op, which there are a number of Department of Wildlife sort of nuances and rules that basically, I don't know if I should be saying this, but allow for a legal monopoly to manage the pricing of brine shrimp from harvest year to harvest year. And so I learned a whole lot about brine shrimp, and there's this world market and demand for brine shrimp and aquaculture as aquaculture feed. And anyway, so we had our hands in a bunch of different things, from milk to relay races to yoga mats, and I moved out to LA to help run one of our companies out there.
That's amazing. I love the Trevor Milton. He owns Nikola Motors, and I had him on a previous episode, and he said all the money is finding something that has that opportunity and just making it sexier, right? Or totally. Like I know Mitt Romney, with what his fund does. They take companies that have a good history, they have a good backing, same kind of thing that you guys are doing, and then they find where the opportunity is to grow those into massive
and scale companies. It. Exactly. And it doesn't have to be anything necessarily overwhelming, like, oh my gosh, that's insane. How'd you think of that? It's like, let's just go try to execute better. Let's go build a great team and have fun doing it. And I tend to see that the more enjoyable it is and the stronger the team is and working together, you'll do great things.
So what are a couple key things people looking to grow their business? I mean, for me, I've never grown past the level where I'm at as far as with my real estate company, because I'm very comfortable there, and it's kind of I love going to work every day. I work with my best friend. I work with my brother, you know, several people that I just really enjoy being around. And so I've never bothered to scale. The scale does scare me a little bit. You've bothered
to scale.
Well, I meant like massive hundreds of agents or anything like that. I mean, there's people that have done that, right? Or I've kept it pretty ma and pa. I mean, we really are comparatively. What are some of those key things, or how do you help somebody that, because I think my situation would be similar to the entrepreneur that has a good company and they're happy and they're doing their thing. But what are some of those key things you do to scale to that next level?
Well, I think what you bring up is interesting and right on. Be aware of what you want. Because what I've run into is typically not the challenge of, crap, we wanted to scale, but we couldn't figure it out. It's been more so the challenge of, I thought I wanted to scale and go to that next step, but actually now that I'm learning what that's like, I would rather be like where I was, and that's okay, right? For me, I want to go in and scale things and grow them, but others I just think it's better to recognize what you want to be and not feeling this pressure to, oh crap, I need to scale, or I need to have triple digit growth. Maybe you don't. Maybe you're way better off like doing what you're doing, and you're happier and you're making more money at times. For
me, I used to be one of the owners of our real estate office, the actual brokerage. We have 180 agents now, and I was spending about a third of my time on that, and I didn't really enjoy it, to be honest. I don't like talking people into going to work. I like to just go produce and like get results from my friends and clients, right? Yeah. And so for me, it really was figuring out like, wow, this is my sweet spot where, and what I said is I'm going to grow outside of real estate, but this is going to be my this is going to be my bread and butter that always kind of is what I do. Yeah. But I'm going to create wealth outside of that through real estate investing, through other companies, things like that.
Totally. And I've done that same thing, or tried to do it, where there's certain businesses or opportunities that I have focused on and know that, okay, let's just leave that there and have it keep rolling, but it doesn't need to go beyond that. And I love, frankly, doing more than one thing at a time. And so recognizing that in myself, I'm just way happier when I'm multitasking, which apparently you're not supposed to do when you read all the business books, but I like it.
Well, I'm kind of like you. I can put in a 16-hour day if I'm doing 3 different things,
Oh, yeah.
right? So I'll work on
Yeah.
my podcast for 3 hours. I'll work on my real estate
Yeah.
course that I sell for 3 hours, and then I'll do real estate for 8 hours.
Yeah.
That's a good day.
Yes.
I can do that. I can't go do real estate anymore for 14 hours in one day. I'm just, I don't want to do it. You know?
Yep.
And so in that sense, I think it's switch tasking is what Dave Crenshaw calls it.
I need to start calling it that.
Yeah, because you're not really
Yeah.
multitasking. You can't work on 3 businesses at once, but you
Right.
can work on one for a few hours,
Yeah.
then completely switch to another
Right,
one
right.
and another one.
Yeah, I worked in Europe for a bit after I was helping to run Manduka, which is a yoga product and apparel company that we acquired through Dolphin. So I moved to LA and was there for 3 years doing that deal. And when we exited that business, I moved back here to Utah. LA was awesome. It was a great time to be out there. Moved back here and thought I was going to take a break, but I ended up not. And so when I was wrapping up Manduka, I started partnered up with an investor who had invested in Dolphin, but had acquired a company in Europe. And I got a call from him saying, hey, now that we exited Manduka, what are you doing? I'm like, well, I was going to breathe for a minute. But he's like, well, I have, this European business. And it cracked me up because he's like, I bought it. I think there's something there. Look, do you want to figure out with me if there's something there? And so I was like, absolutely. And so then I spent the next, year or two going from here to Europe and working on that. But I loved it because I could wake up at 5 a.m. and work on that business and be on, Europe time and then work on some other businesses later in the day, but be able to have a pretty broad involvement in a lot of things.
I love that. Do you have, I think some people have the misconception that a firm like yours, Dolphin, that everything that you invest in, is this big success story. Do you have one that you'd be willing to share, like maybe one that was a failure?
Sure. Let me narrow it down. Definitely we had like failures, if you want to call it that, in terms of we didn't get our capital returned, and maybe we didn't,
I think it's a good example.
Well, one of them was, and I hope it's okay, I'm sharing this. It was Skipstone Staffing. We had partnered with an individual, I have a ton of respect for him. He had been an executive in healthcare staffing businesses for his whole career. And he had exited one and came to us and said, there's something there. I think, why don't we form a business and do healthcare staffing and have some different things going on than the big dogs, and we can be a little more homegrown and approachable. So for that, we thought, hey, let's do it. It was a little outside of what we would typically do because we weren't usually doing startups. We were usually doing existing businesses with that inflection point or opportunity to grow. But we said, well, gosh, here's this amazing executive, totally aligned with our culture and how we would envision doing things. Okay, it's a startup, but we'll do this. And it ended up not working, I think, for a number of reasons, and we learned a lot doing that. One was recognizing those initial concerns we had about, gosh, this is a startup and we're better at having something existing and saying, let's tweak this and turn this and futz with this. And I probably should have leaned into that concern a little more and said, hey, is this really where we should be? And also the other thing I learned was the executive is fantastic, but for him to recognize his sweet spot, he is way more comfortable being an executive in $1 billion company than a startup. Because what was he doing during the day? The things he was used to doing was, I'm going to go lead a manager. Oh, totally different. Whereas we're in there and I'm helping him set up the office, and it's like, hey, where do you want the stack of paper to go? Where should we set up the printer? And that was just a completely different area than our sweet spots.
I think that's a good example. The book, The Richest Man in Babylon, it talks about investing in what you know. I know when I've lost all my money is when I've invested in things that I had no idea. And it's one thing but one thing that you guys did is you invested in the person, which which is always a better chance if you really know who that person is. I know back when 2005, 6, 7, when money was just flowing in and I was young and people were frankly taking advantage of my lack of knowledge and my lack of experience. But I mean, I invested in a dental clinic that might or might not exist somewhere in Arizona. I still don't know to this day, you know, but my mistake was I was just throwing money at, they'd send me some
that pitch
paper.
Sounds good.
Yeah. And it was like have lunch. Next thing I know, you know, my $8 Chili's meal that I was comped from some guy turned into a $50,000 Chili's
check out there. Yeah.
So anyway, but so I think that is one of the investing principles. What do you guys look for if somebody's building a business and they are looking to take on some capital and things like that? What are some things that people need to have in their business for a company like yours to invest with them?
So what we were doing in Dolphin, I think that what was important is that team and clarity of what's your strategy and how are you getting there with what I had mentioned before, human capital and financial capital. It's not just about meeting with an investor and saying, here's how I'm going to use your money. It is about that, but it's also saying, here's how we're going to leverage the talent we have and the industry we're in, and really pairing that human capital and financial capital piece. So when I've not made great investments, it's when I have probably not considered both of those things, the human capital and financial capital. Sometimes it's more comfortable and it's a little easier to evaluate, quote unquote, the financial side. Because you can open up a spreadsheet, but how do you evaluate, can these people get it done? And do they have the drive? And how are they going to handle challenges? And how am I going to handle challenges? And so I think it's both that, you know, money and people.
I think it's a great answer. I think the number one thing I look for if I invest in a company now is, what is the track record of the person making the decisions? Yeah. And how invested are they in their own company, right? If they're bought in and they have a track record of success, then I think that your ability to have success again is going to be much, much greater. Yeah. So that's one of those main things that I try to look for when I'm making little investments. Well, this all led you to a pretty interesting company that you had an idea for, that you're the founder executive of, which was called Duo. Yep. So tell us a little bit. You're doing this Europe thing. You've been working for Dolphin. Yeah. How did Duo come about? And tell us a little bit of what that was.
Yeah, so I was doing the Europe thing and flying back and forth to France, spend a summer in France, which I was like, you know, shoot, darn. And but I was really enjoying that. And then I was approached by a company already in the wedding space. And I had known them for, a long time. They had even talked to me when I was at Dolphin 10 years prior. They had formed, it's Noah's Event Venues, and they had formed, and they construct wedding venues and high-end event venues across the country. So they came to me and said, hey, we have this concept that there might be a way to create and a reason to create a marketplace of event venues. And they said, why don't you mill on that stew over that for a little bit, because there's probably something there. And I fell in love with that concept and really said, hey, I'll do this. I'll step in and let's form something here. And I liked the opportunity to partner with them.
Like an Airbnb for events.
Exactly.
Right?
Yep. I didn't want that to be my tagline, but that's essentially what it was.
Well, you hear we're the next Uber of this and Uber of that, but you guys legitimately have it's Airbnb but for venues and events.
Exactly. And what I got really excited about and proved out to be true is that there's a lot of need and opportunity for unique venue space. And when you go to marketplaces that exist today, they're all of existing venues. And which those are great and helpful, but let's say, Jimmy, you probably do. Do you own a ranch outside of in Texas or something? You probably have
I don't, but Ty Detmer does, and he was on the show. Let's use Ty's Ranch as an example.
So Ty's Ranch in Texas, let's say I'm a bride, what do I want? A spouse, someone to marry. I want a really unique venue. And unless I know Ty, or unless I know someone who knows him and I'm comfortable saying hey, could I use your space? Because there's nowhere I can go to access something like Ty's Ranch, right? And so what we said is, hey, let's bring that to the market. So really the Airbnb of event venues. And I thought, gosh, if we could get, let's say 50 properties in the first year, we're going to kill it, and we'll leverage the Noah's event venue business. But there's this real opportunity to create venues and make them accessible to the market. And we brought on, with 1.5 salespeople, 250 venues in the first 9 months.
Wow, and your goal was 50.
Was 50 in 12, yeah.
So give us an idea of some of the type of event, like of these centers that you had.
Yeah, so we did bring on existing venues, which was great because they saw the pull for that and the interest really quickly, where they said, great, if you're going to bring customers to me, then we all win. So we had existing venues like that. We had all the Noah's event venues. There were about 40, 45 of those. Had all of those as really a platform to our marketplace. And then we had, a number of venues in St. Croix, an event planner there who loved what we were doing, and we put all of the venues that she worked with on our marketplace. A bunch of ranches in Texas, outside of Arizona. I mean, we were in about 38 states, I want to say, and that was with what I'll call our test launch, to say, is there something here, and will other people like it as much as I think they will? What
was your most unique space that you brought on?
Well, one that I love is it's in Florida, and it has those like Spanish oak moss tree, like beautiful. It's right on the shore, and there's a little pond. It's next to a golf course. Like, it's just very quintessential. And there were a lot of those that, there's just so much opportunity and interest.
So you guys have taken on 250 spaces. What next?
Yeah. So then, similar to what we were talking about a few minutes ago, where it's important, I think, to recognize what type of entrepreneur you are, what type of investor you are. My goal in this was to really scale, and I saw $1 billion opportunity in this marketplace concept and bringing that uniqueness to a market that wants it, right? And no disparagement here at all. The partners, the Noah's partners that I had partnered with to do this deal, really, when it comes down to it, I think recognized, this isn't where we want to be. I was saying, are you kidding me? Because it's everything we wanted to create and more. And to put on, their hat, I think they ended up saying, well, hey, we were really comfortable with what we were doing. And I think they want to do what I was doing, but because I had moved Noah's and their entire business under Duo. Okay. And so we now had 350 employees, and we were managing all of the Noah's event centers, and I was doing this Duo marketplace as the umbrella over everything. And so here I'm like, let's crank this thing. We have 250 venues. Let's make it 750 by the end of this year. We have 350 employees. We're putting on hundreds of events a weekend. There's a lot going on here. And I launched wedding financing, which we should probably talk about. So I was just like, hey, we're cranking. This is exactly what we wanted, right? And the answer back ended up, I think, when the founders of Noah's were introspective for a minute, recognized that the pushback they were feeling was that maybe that's not where they want to be. And so we parted ways, and now I'm going to go. Well,
you made a really cool transition, because one thing you discovered doing, and this is, I think, an important principle in business in general, is a lot of times you start something, even a grand idea, and all of a sudden you see opportunities in other places, right? Yeah. And that's kind of what you did here. So you decide to step away from the Duo business, but you had what you've now launched, which is wedding financing. Yeah. So give us a little bit of idea why you started that.
So when I was at Duo, as I mentioned, we took over Noah's. So really think of Noah's event venues as a product line of Duo, which is what it was. And as I was doing this, I'm a finance numbers person. So I'm like, you can solve anything through looking at a spreadsheet and going through numbers. And so as I started doing this, I was recognizing, whoa, how much money people are spending on weddings. And I was thinking, and also the average pre-book time. So to give you a sense, on average in this country, and I still can't believe it, but it's amazing, average consumer is spending $32,000 on their wedding.
That's a lot.
Average.
That's not the average for Utah.
We don't feel that here. It's maybe 10.
Yeah.
10 to 12 here.
Yeah. But you're right though. I mean, my friend got married in Brooklyn. I think he spent $80,000 on his wedding. My friend got married in Calgary. She spent $150,000 on her wedding. It's not unusual outside of Utah to spend 20, 30, 50, 100 grand on a wedding.
Because it's the best day of your life, right? And hopefully you're doing it once. And so I was looking at the numbers and saying, okay, how do I get people to spend more with us? And I thought, well, they're spending so much already, and they might have a Capital One card with like a $3,000 limit. I'm just thinking of where was I when I was like graduating from college and getting married. You have a vehicle loan, but to go spend 20 grand on something is probably not, an average amount in a checking account. So I thought, well, gosh, what if I create a payment plan here and make it more approachable for our customers to finance their wedding? And I said, let's test this out. So I created Duo Pay. And
were you guys self-financed, or did you partner with a
bank? We were
self-financed
at that time, and I raised about $5 million to support that. Where I said, hey, let's test this out because I really think there's something here. We already have the customers. We're already booking events. Let's learn what would be valuable for customers to have. And my thinking was, I want to close more deals. Right? The people who are on the fence because they're not sure if they want to drop, $7,500 on just the event venue. So I want to have a higher closing ratio, and I want to see if I can increase my average order value. And both of those things happened. So the first month that we test launched this, we financed over $1.5 million in event financing. And our customers were loving it because it made it what we wanted it to do. It made it more approachable for them. And they're saying, hey, I wasn't going to do the champagne toast because it's another $750. But if it's really only another $75 a month, like, we're doing it. And I wanted to be able to bring that to customers and have them like, get the champagne toast because we're going to make it more affordable for you to do it. And
I think about how many people, I mean, there might be people listening right now like, oh man, that sounds risky to finance your wedding. But then there's also people listening who are like, gosh, I always wish my wedding had done this, or we've been able to do this. And most people don't even think of some of the things they could have probably done at their wedding because they just knew it was outside of the budget, right? So what you've done is created an opportunity where if they want to have this experience, they absolutely now can, and they can finance it.
That's right.
And so how does it go from here then? So do you partner now with some banks to do these financing?
Yeah, so that's what I'm in the middle of right now, is saying, okay, I did this test financing, product called Duo Pay, did it for about 6 or 7 months, and then I parted ways from the Noah's partners and said, well, what did I learn in that? I learned that there's a huge opportunity and need for wedding financing, and I continue to believe that that marketplace is really valuable, and these things pair well together. The marketplace of unique venues that you can also afford. Yeah. Because you're financing them. So now that's what I'm working on is I'm calling it Duo 2.0 is my project that I'm working on, but saying I'm going to take everything that I learned in Duo and continue doing that, but really focusing on the financing side and bringing that to the market. And partnering with hedge funds and banks to do it in a major way, because we financed about $10 million in events in the 6-month trial period.
Just in that 6 months, you guys were able to finance that much?
Yep.
Wow, no, that's fantastic. Well, and so you got a lot of stuff going on. You always are, like you said, you like to be busy and doing things. And you've kind of had, I mean, a lot of people are listening to your story right now like, this is amazing. I love how she's transitioned from one thing to the next. But it's not without struggles along the way.
It's not sexy. No.
No. Give us an idea of what a few of the things you've had to deal. I know this last year has been a really tough year, but dig into that a little bit if you would, and kind of help our listeners understand that it's not all roses when you're trying to do big things.
Isn't that the truth? And I don't want to sound negative, but I also don't want to sound like, hey, everything's roses, right? And I think it's like embracing that the chaos that you feel sometimes. And one thing I've been dealing with a lot of things, but recognizing that sometimes things are challenging because maybe I made decisions that are tough. Like if I'm not running a business well, then I'm going to have to deal with those challenges. But other times things are imposed on you. And, when the economy craps out, like, okay, you have to deal with that. You didn't cause that in the economy, but you'll have to deal with it.
Where were you at in your career when the economy crashed in 2008?
So I was doing Dolphin Capital, and we had just raised our fund, but thought this is a horrible time for us to go deploy a bunch of capital. So I said, I'm going to take a sabbatical, and I went and backpacked through India for 3 months.
That was pretty good timing.
I just figured, like, we're not going to be investing in deals.
Had it already crashed then? And kind of, okay. So
yeah, so we had made some investments and, had to get through that being imposed on us. But at that time, I said, I'm going to go backpack around. And
how did you choose India of all places to go?
I had just always been super fascinated with it, and ended up a few years after that, or a year after that, I would say, getting married to a guy that I had met previous to the India trip, but we reconnected then, and I have a 7-year-old boy who says now that he's 70% Indian, 30% American. So
okay.
yeah. So that worked out well. But to go back to where we started on this, I've had a handful of challenges. I'm going through a divorce, and that is rough and kind of ironic that I'm financing weddings and creating a marketplace for those. But we had a great wedding.
Maybe the next thing is finance divorces as well.
Really, that's a spreadsheet I'm working on right now. And so I'm going through that. I have been having like unexplained seizures, and I can't drive. I'm just like, the crap that you just have to deal with sometimes. The first seizure that I had was, do you know Sid, who's at Peak Ventures? Mm-hmm. I was at lunch with him, and I woke up in the ER. I was like, all I remember is I was talking to him and Jeff, partners there, and I'm eating my mushroom soup down in Provo, and I woke up in the ER. And I'm like, Sid, did we die? Like, what happened? And I honestly think that, who knows why I'm having them, but I've been really stressed, and I think probably contributes.
That is a giant stressor on somebody, too, because my brother, JD, suffered those for about 10, 15 years, and he couldn't hold his kids, he couldn't go swimming, he couldn't go on a roof, he couldn't drive. And there's a lot of limitations.
Yeah.
I don't know, and they never find out what causes them.
They
either.
never really do.
That's the weird part. Like,
I think I'm on the up and up with it, but I haven't been able to like swim or drive.
He had one in church once, and his poor wife, my sister-in-law Amy, is just like, everyone leave him alone. He's fine. Don't call the ER. It's going to be expensive. Like, we got this. Like, he's just doing his thing,
He'll be back.
And then, I had about 2 summers ago, I was driving home from Lake Powell, and I was towing my boat, and I had a couple girls in my car with me and good friends.
That sounds like a very Jimmy story.
It kind of is, right? It's like the way that I'm going to die.
Okay.
I know. And all of a sudden, I was talking to my friend Courtney, who was in the passenger seat, and I just felt this weirdness go to my head. It never happened to me before or since, and I just looked at her and I go, I don't feel good. And she said, I just went boom, just like out. Like
really?
Just while I was driving.
You
fainted, towing a boat. And so the girl, my friend Presley and my friend Nicole are in the back. They both try to like grab the wheel, and she's trying to wake me up. And I come to a standstill in the middle of the road on a 70-mile-an-hour, highway.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, what happened? And they're like, get out. You're
not driving home.
It was, it was terrifying though.
Terrifying. Well, I was driving to a business lunch for Duo, and I had just hired a gal from California. She flew here to meet the rest of the team, and I said, hey, let's go meet the team for lunch. So I'm driving because things were fine then, and I hadn't had seizures in a while. And she luckily is like 90 pounds because I was driving and apparently had a seizure when I was driving on the freeway here. And she jumped like on top of me and pulled to the side of the road and called 911 at the same time, and all this. The paramedics were trying to hire her because they're like, you handled that amazingly well. But there's times I'm finding where it sure feels like things all happen at once, where I'm like, I can't drive, and then when I could drive, I had a seizure and almost died, and on the side of the road. I had to part ways with business partners. I'm going through a divorce. But like with all of that being said, I sure hope that I sure hope to respond to things in the right way, recognizing that, hey, at times things are imposed on you, and how do you deal with it? And that's probably what matters more than what's imposed on you.
Well, it's such a mature way to look at it, because I think so often we want to, it's just easier to play victim. It just is, right? You can toss blame to other places. It doesn't require any introspection or any change within ourselves. But I think the way that we react to what happens to us is so important in life. And Tony Robbins says it best, he says it all the time. He says, you only feel pain if you choose to play the story that way. You can play the story however you want. And I know one of my favorite quotes is Viktor Frankl, the Man's Search for Meaning. He says, the last of one's freedoms is the way that you choose to respond to whatever anybody does in any given situation. That's one of my all-time favorite quotes, because it's so true. It's, right now you're in a situation where you could just, you have all the reasons in the world if you wanted to just kind of tuck it in for a while, but you're launching this new venture and you're doing these things. And so it is fun to see people that are maybe experiencing similar, just feels like life's been a little bit rough lately. What things are you doing for self-care? What are you doing to help you handle this in such a mature way?
Well, I hope I'm handling it in a mature way. I think at times I feel like I'm not, but then I go get a pedicure and things seem to be better. So I guess that's some self-care. You can't see it, but I have this painting on my wall that I'm looking at, and it's front and center in my house, and it's this painting that I've loved for a long time with an elephant. And behind that elephant are these zebras. They're in the desert, and these zebras are kind of looking wherever, and they're not moving. But yet this elephant is really strong and moving forward and not worried about, the dust that's on the left or the right, but is saying, and that's at least my interpretation of this painting, is looking at that elephant and saying, I can be strong and I can use my strength for good and to move forward and to be focused versus maybe standing still or not being focused. So that's what I'm trying to do, is say, I can be strong, I can get through this, and I can get through this in an even better position than before all of this, and recognizing that in myself. One thing I'm probably guilty of is not giving myself enough self-care, but maybe it's because what I like to do is working and getting things done and raising my son and having him have great experiences, and that's a lot of self-care for me. So I'm just trying to focus on that and allow myself to
I think that's one of those principles in general. Whenever we're feel like things aren't exactly where we want them to be, if you can get outside of yourself and do something for somebody else, like you're doing that with your son, and you're still doing this with weddings and helping people that way, I think you do forget anything that's self-centered or whatever, because most of the pain that we're going to feel is going to be self-inflicted, or we're just going to feel it ourselves. So when you're out serving other people, it allows for this space for love to occur.
Absolutely.
No, that's awesome. Well, your story is inspirational. I love it. It's fun. I literally remember back at Windsor Park, that was where we all lived. And
WP.
It's fun to catch up with people and see. And I've kind of been watching your journey, and it'll be fun to see what you do with this wedding finance coming, because I have no doubt it's going to be a huge success. But
I hope so.
Thank you so much. You're awesome.
Thanks so much.
Okay.
Awesome.
Thanks,
Love it.
Jill.